My name's Heather Shipman and I'm the lead local pastor for the Yorkshire North and East District. And today I'm tasked with introducing you to the role of a local pastor. Lay people have always played a significant part in the history of the Methodist Church, although the extent and the nature of that role has varied. They've also been prepared to do whatever God has called them to do, and they've responded quite naturally to challenges that the church has faced. Here we are, though, in the second decade of the 21st century, and the Methodist Church is facing a shortage of candidates offering for presbyteral ministry. This is causing quite a crisis within our church. But at the same time, we are discerning a spirit-led rise in lay people's calling to share in local ministry within the church. This is something we very much welcome and wonder if putting the two together doesn't lead you, as it led me and many others, to think of the role of local pastor. So my challenge to you today is, if you're a lay person, do your gifts and graces fit with the role of local pastor? Is this maybe somewhere that God is leading you, calling you on your faith journey? Or if maybe as a presbyter, would you like to share your ministry with someone else? Have some of that burden lifted from your shoulders and replaced by the joy of shared ministry? Currently we have two models of local pastor. There's the standalone model and there's the side-by-side model. Looking at the side-by-side model first, instead of me telling you all about it, let's listen to two people who are experiencing that model on the ground. Let's talk to Ben and Claire of the Nid Valley Circuit.
I'm the circuit superintendent here in the Nid Valley Circuit, and a couple of years ago, as we looked to renew our circuit vision, we began to think through what that might mean in terms of local support in our churches. And one of the review processes we went through brought out a very clear policy direction. We've agreed as a circuit that by 2025 we will have local pastors in every church. Now by that we don't mean that there will be an individual pastor for each of our 14 churches, and Claire here is our very first local pastor. She works alongside me in a side-by-side role, so my equal absolutely in our ministry here at Trinity Methodist Church, which you can see behind us, and down the road at Panel.
It came about, you advertised on social media the role, and I kept looking at it, and me being me, just totally ignored it, put it to one side, and then suddenly it took a few friends to actually say, I could see you doing that, that is you. So I applied for the role, came for an interview, not realising it was an hour and a half interview to talk about me, with three people asking questions. I don't think I stopped all the way through the interview. No. And then I got the position. I've been in the position for a year now.
It's just a year.
And it has been an amazing role. I knew God was calling me to do something in the church. And I see my role as supporting Ben when he needs it. We work very closely together. We have a good working relationship. I think we also have the same work ethics. We think the same. It's certainly a laugh a minute, isn't it?
Yeah.
And also it's supporting the churches in any of their mission or outreach that they're doing. So I attend certain events that are coming up when churches are back open again, of course. But also the main part of my role is the pastoral care that we have with the people, and there's something about going to see people in their homes and sharing Jesus with them through times of need, upset or anything that they need, and that to me is a very personal part of my role. That's how I see it.
Very much I think we've seen over the 12-month period people in the churches trying to work out initially, well, what is Claire's role, to now there's no questions. Everybody knows what Claire's role is, and everybody sees Claire as an absolute equal. If I can't be at a meeting or if I can't go and visit somebody, Claire is absolutely my equal, and side by side we're talking all the time in the background. during lockdown we've had a weekly meeting, but before that it was we just kept talking. We WhatsApp each other all the time, keeping each other up to date in the stuff that's going on, that then enables a seamless flow. It doesn't matter which of us or both of us turn up at different things, the ministry is still happening. And whilst I'm the ordained person, Claire is very much a minister in this circuit, very clearly called into this lay role, and it's growing and flourishing, and we've now got other churches across the circuit beginning to say, when are we getting our Claire?
I think they do now. They didn't at the beginning, did they? They didn't know how it was going to work.
They hadn't a clue to begin with, and I think initially their worry was about, well, how are we paying for this? Is our assessment going to go up and nobody else's because we've got Claire? That's not fair. But I think they're now seeing the benefits of having an additional member of staff. I think it's fair to say as well that there's some weeks your work is very Trinity based.
Yeah.
And you wonder how we're going to ever get down the road to panel, and then there's other weeks where it's meeting after meeting at panel and Trinity just bobble along. It is different each week, isn't it?
Yeah, it varies, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But I know there was a few concerns as to how it would work, and I know that at the beginning they used to email Ben and not include me, but now they've finally understand that they've got to include me because I'm more likely to get back to them quicker than maybe Ben can and sort things out quicker.
Yeah.
And especially with pastoral, isn't it? Sometimes I'm able to get in touch and go and see people a lot quicker than you can, depending on your workload.
Yeah, because often my diary being superintendent is so full, actually having another pair of hands on the ground who I can say, Claire, I know you've been the last 3 times, but I just haven't got the space even to make a phone call. I can do that in 30 seconds on a WhatsApp and I know it will be done. And I know the person at the other end will initially, you're right, that there was, well, Ben's still not been in touch, but I think that's getting less and less as time goes on, and lockdowns really helps that because people have had to accept that they get what they get, and people are far more, I think, accepting of you now in your role and understanding that the local pastor is an absolute equivalent to me. And some of that, I think, comes, I think it's beholden on me as minister to actually model that. So I make sure all the time I don't talk about myself as above Claire, and I don't talk about myself as Claire's boss. We're absolute equals, and that has to be in meetings, in pastoral visits, in conversations when Claire's not there. I have to make sure that I am modelling that this is absolutely side by side all the time, and whatever's said to me, I will tell Claire. It may go no further, but that the confidence now includes Claire.
And I think, like I said, our work ethics is the same, and we both think alike anyway, don't we? And I think people can see we get on quite well because we're like this, even in services we're like this, we bounce off each other. And I think I really do cherish, it's not only our work relationship, but I think it's become a friendship as well
Very
now.
deep friendship.
Which is something that'll continue.
And I can see, I think one of the other things that's changed, and I think it is that over the 12 months, people have seen Claire and I become very good friends and see that we actually deeply care for each other and deeply care for each other's families. And I think that shows that mutuality that is so vital in a local pastor side-by-side role. We very clearly said that not all the circuit ones will be side-by-side. There'll be some local pastor leads across the circuit, and that will work in a very different way than this. And it's about finding the right person for the right role, and Claire is very clearly called and is sent by God to be the person here at Trinity and Panel, I have no doubt. And I've said publicly, repeatedly, I couldn't cope without Claire now. She's absolutely my left hand and my right hand.
It's like everything's always, excuse me, Ben and Claire, isn't it?
Yeah, it is now.
Or Claire and Ben, it's depending which way you do it.
Yeah. There are still areas that we're working on, so at present time I've not handed over yet any chairing of church councils. That's definitely in the plan to do in time, but at the minute, whilst the congregations are still learning how this works, I think we've sort of agreed that just for now I will continue to chair church councils, also while you learn how they work, because they are a little bit of a unique beast in the plethora of meetings the danger with that is that I think that could undermine in time the work ethic and the work relationship that we've got. And we always try before meetings to make sure we've talked through the agenda together, so we know we're in agreement, so it's whoever they actually talk to, they're getting the same result. It's just learning those chairing skills, and in time, very clearly, one of the things we will be working towards, had lockdown not happened, we might already be there, but is moving towards Claire chairing the church council and me sitting back. Not sitting back and doing nothing, but being an active participant in the meeting, and just allowing that change to happen. Because I think very clearly, this comes to me as the heart of Methodism, is an absolute equality between the lay and the ordained. And I think we've got to strive to ensure that is the case. I am not a vicar, I'm a Methodist minister, and I am equal to Claire. Just because I've been given some responsibilities as superintendent and as an ordained minister doesn't mean that I lord it over other people. And part of that is sharing and using the gifts of the people around us, and I think that is so important.
I felt God was calling me into the church, but I didn't know what as, and I knew definitely it wasn't ordained. I mean, I was called, and I really do think it's a personal calling, and I would recommend that if you do see an advert for a local pastor, to apply if you feel that's what God's calling you to do. I absolutely love this role. I knew it was right for me. I've never regretted it. I love coming to work. I don't think, oh, here we go, it's another day at work, like in my previous job. But here, I love it. I love the people I meet. I love chatting to people. I think my grounding as being a care worker in a residential home's helped with the older generation. I think also having young children's helped with the younger generation. And I just think that, that bit of my personal life comes in quite a lot into my work. I'm very open when it comes to my family. I'm very close to my mum, and she's very supportive of this role, as is my husband. So I would recommend that if you see an advert and you feel that God is calling you, you take that leap of faith and you won't regret it.
I think very clearly you have been absolutely called into this role, and there's no question that everybody you come into contact with, there is a real sense that they see in you this calling, and I don't feel that there's anything that I've thrown at you that I've thought probably shouldn't throw that at Claire because, and I think the breadth of your skills and gifts, just work with older people, with younger people. You've grown in your preaching ministry because you were a fairly young preacher when you started this role, and even those at one of the churches who might be a little bit more wanting a deeper sermon are now beginning to say, we're getting there, we're moving on. There is deep growth. So even those who were initially sceptical, critical, oh well, we're only ever going to talk to Ben, not only because he's the minister but he's the superintendent, that just has gone, and there's such an acceptance of you as part of these communities, deep down, that you are part of them now and they are part of your life and ministry. I think it's really exciting to see how that's changed since we started 12 months ago.
I don't think there's anything I can add to that, really.
You're just brilliant.
But I mean, we do work with, the colleagues that we work with are fantastic, and I think during lockdown, I think we've grown together as a circuit ministry team, and I think also I've evolved during lockdown as well, just with my own personal faith with God, and also as part of the ministry team. So yeah, I would definitely recommend anyone to become a local pastor.
The second model is the model where the local pastor has sole pastoral care of a church, but the presbyter maintains pastoral charge. John Bailey holds just such a role in the York circuit.
I mean, a lot of ways it's the role of the minister, if you like. The only thing I can't do at the moment is communion. So apart from that, I do everything. I was prior to this, I was in Cornwall. I'd done a local pastor job down there for 6 years, so with 4 churches, and we were very short of presbyters down there. So I really worked as a minister to the superintendent, who occasionally popped in, but that was all. But you know, I had ultimate responsibility for those 4 churches, which means leading services on Sunday, working out the strategy of the church, the mission, the pastoral responsibilities, and yeah, that's it. Chairing church councils and any other meetings, looking after pastoral visitors, and since I came to York to work alongside a presbyter with 3 churches as pastoral missioner. That was how it started, which is really doing some mission work and looking after the sort of pastoral side, because they're quite large churches. But then last September, the presbyter has taken on a district role as well, and we decided that it would be better with one of the churches if I took the lead as the pastor there. So that's why I've got still pastoral missioner in 2 churches and the lead pastor in the other one, which means we work together. I keep him informed of what I'm doing, he keeps me informed about what he's doing. We cover for each other during holidays. I mean, normally people will go to him in the other 2 churches for starters. In theory, they come to me. It's with COVID, it's been totally different. We've actually brought all the 3 churches together for a morning service, which we're doing on Zoom. So things have been a little bit different, and obviously visiting's changed as well. So it's all been done by telephone, and my responsibility in that is to look after the people who've not got internet. So I've been sending stuff out by post to them and keeping in touch by telephone. I think the roles are very similar, really, except that the emphasis in the other 2 would be on reaching out to the community and looking after pastoral visitors, providing some training, doing the difficult visits that need to be done, which would be the same in all the churches. Quite often, though, perhaps the first protocol for things like funerals and things would be to the minister. Again, we share those because he can't do them all. But being the lead pastor means that it comes to me first. Obviously, if I can't do it, or if I get stuck, then there is somebody else I can go to. But it's just a sort of turning it on its head, really, as to who takes the lead. I think from my point of view, my call to ministry, which goes back to when I was a teenager, really, but I never felt that I was really called to be an ordained minister. I was quite happy to do it as a lay person and to do it locally, not be itinerant. And sort of in the past, I'd worked with, as you know, Sunday school superintendent, youth leader, fellowship leader, house group leader, things like that, which I think as I've got older has developed into something more than that. I did actually candidate for ministry when I was about 55, but it was ministry and local appointment, just at the time when the Methodist Church were beginning to get rid of that sort of role. And I think local pastor really has replaced that. In Cornwall, it was different because I went in as a local pastor, and the one of the churches I worked with just did not want a local pastor, and we knocked it on the head after 6 months because it just wasn't working. The others were okay. There were people who said, no, we would rather have a proper minister, as they say. And people did talk about they wanted somebody who was trained properly, until it was really pointed out to them that you know, all the training that I'd had was probably very similar to what presbyters have had, because an awful lot of it was done after Bible college and things like that. It's things that you picked up. And I come from a civil service background, so I've been used to working as a manager, so you know, it's not that much different in church. So it's been a bit different here with having the same pastor, whereas in Cornwall, when I started with the 4 churches, the people who accepted me as their minister in effect. Well, all of our congregation, of course, are lay people, and to have a lay person as the pastor, I think brings me closer to them. I know where they're coming from work-wise. I've not got a collar, so I look just like them. And yes, and we can share the ministry together. The church isn't about the ordained people or about the local pastor, it's about us all working together, and we've all got different roles. And I think everywhere I've worked, working alongside a presbyter, they've accepted that I've got an equally valid ministry as they have. As indeed of the church stewards, the people who do the flowers, the organist, everybody else who works in church. We've all got our roles, all got our ministries, and we need to work together. And I think sometimes having a layperson doing that who's not properly trained, if you like, perhaps is an advantage, I don't know.
So maybe you're wondering now what it is like to receive a call to the role of local pastor. Well, I could tell you my experiences, but I'd rather you talked or listened to someone who's very currently working as a local pastor and who received the call not so very long ago. Let's listen to Donald Milne from the Tadcaster Circuit.
When I first started, the title lay pastoral missioner was really quite handy, because I was people said, well, what do you actually do? And I said, well, I'm lay, which means I'm not ordained. I'm pastoral, which means visiting and talking and stuff like that. And I'm missional, which means I do have a role to try and go out and reach out to people. I've been doing the job for just over 2 years. So it was advertised about 2.5 years ago. I saw the advert, thought about it, and no, that's not for me. Then somebody who I respect a great deal said that I ought to take a proper look at it. So, out of respect, I did, and thought, no, that's not for me. And he said, well, apply for it and see what happens. So I filled in an application form, and the team that looked at that said, whoever filled this in really doesn't want the job. So anyway, it went through, and they asked me to go for an interview. And at that stage, I was still just going through the motions. And I thought, well, I'll come down here to church, and I'll just take 20 minutes before the interview to gather my thoughts, pray about it, and see if God had anything to say about it. Just before I was going to leave home, my sister rang, and we chatted about stuff for a while, and at the end she said, what's this job you're going for? And I explained what I thought it was, and she said, you'd be ideal for that. And my sister is not a church-going, religious-y person at all, and that kind of took me back a bit. So I drove down to church. Literally, I had about 2 minutes before the interview. I rushed into the church, sat down in the front row, and basically said, God, if you've got to tell me anything, tell me between now and when I get to the interview. And as I was walking out, I had this, it wasn't a voice in my head, but it was a really strong thought. I just told you, didn't I? Which I think was what my sister had said. So by the time I'd driven from here to the manse for the interview, I'd gone from just going through the motions to I want this job. It is for me. I've had a nudge. I'm going to do my absolute best. So yeah, and I got the job. It was interesting. I assumed that when I'd start, I would be told, this is what you're doing. You know, Steve, the presbyter who I'm working with, they say, I want you to do this, this, and this. And on day one, he said, well, I asked, what do you want me to do? And he said, well, that's for you to work out. And I said, well, how long have I got? And he said, as long as it takes. I think it probably took about 6 weeks of going to places, seeing where I thought I could make a difference, and seeing other things where I thought beforehand, oh, well, I'll get involved with that, and subsequently deciding, do you know what, that's going really well. What am I going to add by getting involved in it? It'll be a waste of my time, so I'll do this instead. So pre-COVID, I was helping out with the mother and toddler groups. It was great fun, doing story times at that. At the other end of the scale, coffee mornings with more elderly people, home visiting, hospital visiting, taking extended communion out. And 1 or 2 new ideas where I got a lot of support. We decided to do a pop-up cinema in the chapel at Boston Spa, which Doesn't sound very appropriate or religious, but it's the same layout as a cinema. You know, it's got a flat seating down the bottom and banked seating at the back. So we put up a screen. We had 150 come in to see The Greatest Showman, mostly young mums, kids, most of whom had never been before. So that was a great thing. So it's all going really, really well. And then COVID came along, and everything that I did stopped. Everything. There was not a single thing in there that I could carry on doing. So post-COVID, I'm on currently week 23 of our newsletter, where we try and keep people up to date and include worship opportunities and a bit of fun stuff and some prayer requests and all kinds of things like that. We're recording, I do a weekly story time, replicating what I did for the toddlers, but putting it online. Circuit reflections, circuit prayers. I've learned how to edit, which is wonderful. With the story times, when they first started, I had to do the whole story in one take because I didn't know how to edit. And I got onto stories like the Dinky Donkey and the Wonky Donkey, which are really, really tongue twisters. And when the Dinky Donkey took me 14 attempts to get it in one take, that's when I decided I needed to learn how to edit. So Zoom coffee mornings, Zoom meetings. It's pretty much everything in there, apart from the newsletters, which I'd done at work before. Everything in there was completely new to me. So if anybody's watching this and thinking, oh well, I can't do any of that. If you'd asked me 6 months ago, 7 months ago, I would have said exactly the same. I've never done it before, completely new to me, but somehow I've learned. Part of the problem and the excitement of the role as a lay pastor or local pastor or whatever it is that everyone is slightly different. As you work with whoever the presbyter is and the congregations, and you work out where there's weaknesses, where there's strengths, and try and tie those in with what you think you can do, even if it's stuff you've never done before, then the job kind of shapes in different directions. So I don't think you can ever say, lay pastor, local pastor, boom, that's it. That's what they do. It'll be different dependent on the gifts and graces of each individual. As my role has developed and as we've changed within our particular circuit, we've gone from 3 presbyters, we're going down to 2 presbyters. So the roles and how they interlink has changed. And part of my role is to use my strengths, whatever they might be, and either in existing situations or in new ones. But also part of my role is to release the presbyter, to allow him or her to use their strengths. Because the role of presbyter is just, it's a blanket, it's everything. And there's a huge danger, particularly when there's only 2 in the circuit, that they can get sucked in to doing the things that aren't really their strengths. So if I can do anything to release them time to play to their strengths as well. So it's kind of a two-handed thing. I guess for individuals, the message would be don't be scared by it. If you have a calling to do it, then I'm a very firm believer that God doesn't call without equipping, even if it's not like I'm doing at the moment in the ways that you imagined at the start. And it may be that you learn new things. It may be that things you already do can be used in ways you hadn't even thought of. For circuits, I guess it's in some ways it's even harder because they're half a step removed from the process. The individual has a calling. The circuit maybe doesn't. They're just thinking, well, we've got a problem. How do we fill it? But I'd encourage circuits to look at it. Certainly, as far as Tadcaster Circuit is concerned, it's been a big success. There are 3 of us now. We each enjoy the role. We feel that we're making a difference.
As a district, we're committed to encouraging the growth of flourishing missional communities, and we developed 4 priorities as a district that we saw were the things that we needed to focus on to help local churches and circuits to flourish. And one of those priorities was the theme of growing lay leadership. And I'm so delighted to see the growth and development of local pastors in circuits around the district over these last few months and years. It's great to see people responding to a sense of call and vocation to that role of lay leadership. It's great to see models developing of ordained ministry alongside lay ministry. And it all speaks to me of the richness of our Methodist heritage, that whereas a growing movement, we saw the need for lay leadership alongside ordained leadership as being something that really enabled us to be growing communities in every different location. So great encouragement to see these stories of local pastors developing in our district.
If you would like to know more, then please have a look on the district website or the United Kingdom Methodist Church website. You'll find a lot more information there. Or maybe you'd like to give me a ring, or the Reverend Steve Barlow, a circuit support team leader, a call, and we will be happy to help you with any further discernment. Just one final point. The role does carry a lot of training. We're working with Cliff College on a training package. We're also going to introduce supervision as a lay role and as a circuit appointment. It's subject to the local employment subcommittee. I just want to finish off with one word. It's a fantastic role. Please think about it.